later on I can put. Yes. Today's topic is about the design of experiments, and we will discuss what kind of experiments are available, why we do them, and actually what is the flow that we follow in order to design those experiments. First of all, we have to understand that as an engineers, wherever we work, either we work as petroleum engineers, or we work as mechanical engineers, or I mean, wherever, which field we try, we work, especially in chemical and petroleum, the experimental section plays a very major role, because whatever we select, we decide for the company, we have to first try it in our laboratories, and then we can go back and apply in real time scenarios. So in that regard, we have to design the experiments to answer the practical problems. So at every stage, at every point, you will see that the experimentation is needed. On the other side, as I told you in the last lecture, that for the master's degree also you need the experimentation, a lot of experimentation for your research and publications and so on. So that's why we need a lot of experimentation process. So exactly, first of all, we are talking about here laboratory engineering. We are here to do the experiments, conduct the experiments. So first we need to know what is exactly an experiment itself. Well, what is the experiment? It's a test and series of purposeful changes to made in the input variable or a factor of a system. So if I show you in the whiteboard, let me stop this presentation and open the whiteboard. Okay. Now, for example, we have a cup of coffee. We have a coffee. This is a scenario I'm giving you here. Now, the question for this coffee is, how much coffee needs to be added? Needs to be. Or let's say you are making cappuccino, so how much milk needs to be added? Or how much sugar needs to be added? So these are the examples which are, we use it in our daily life. Now we can select these three numbers or their quantities based on the experiment. For example, we have the coffee, we can try it. Okay, what we want. Let's say we can put 1 spoon of sugar. Then we can put two spoons of sugar. So, and then we can try whether it gives us the desired taste or not. So one time you do the experiment, you try to learn about it, the coffee, and the amount of sugar you need, amount of milk you need. Once you are done with it, and then you can make coffee every day. So experimentation is the process of actually finding out the optimum factors. Here, what are the optimum factors? How much coffee, how much milk, and how much sugar. This is one of the experiment in general we can talk about. If you talk about, okay, first I would like to ask which experiments you have done before, so far. Anyone?
In which class, sir?
Any class, any.
We have like lots of labs, fluid labs and physics labs.
Okay.
And for the fluid, we mostly measure the flow and the flow of liquid. And
so actually you had the pipe, you made the pipe like this one, and then you had the liquid. You're talking
flow.
that you had the liquid, let's say water.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say you had the liquid water, or maybe you had honey, or maybe you had different viscosities.
Yes.
With water or honey, or maybe you had crude oil. Crude oil. You can even use, let's say, engine oil, cooking oil. So everyone has different viscosity and different flow rates. So actually you had 5 different kind of fluids, and you had a pipe and you wanted to know its flow rates at certain pressure, whatever pressure you were applying. So you were trying to find out that, for example, you want to send water from this point A to point B, how much time it takes. Okay, this is the experiment you can develop. Here at this point, this is your point A. Okay, this is your point B. This is your point B. So how much time it takes for water to goes from here to here, and at what conditions, what are the conditions, for example, what is the pressure and temperature inside. Okay. And in the real case, when I give you the example, let me save this and clear all drawing. For example, now in Kurdistan, as you know that basically I'm a petroleum engineer, so I'll more talk about oil and gas and transportation related that to that similar stories. For example, now we are located here in, let's say, Suleimani, and the oil we have to go is going from here to Cihan, Turkey. Okay, so we devise a pipeline. We have a pipeline. Of course, it is not a straight pipeline, but assume that we have a straight pipeline. Okay. Now, at this point in Cihan, Turkey, the customer is looking for crude oil at 300 psi. Okay. The distance between Suleimani and Cihan, Turkey is around, let's say, 2,500 kilometers. It's that long. So you have a huge long distance pipeline starting from Suleimani, to Turkey, and the customer wants to have 300 psi. So the question comes here, what should be the pressure at this point? What should be the pressure? What should be the API gravity? What should be the density? What should be the viscosity? What is its flash point? What it is pour point, and so many other factors that are needed to, we can say, what is this API gravity, density, viscosity, flash point, pour point, and okay, for now they are fine. So we have lots of factors that affect this pipeline system. So in the laboratory, first we have to check all of them before we send to them. So that's why the experimentation is important and is a crucial part, and they have to be done in every field, in every place. Now we are here learning. Okay. Now this is what we, so how the experiments are done actually, we change the input parameters, and we will see that how this is happening in the coming step. So what are the stage and steps for experimentation, like how we do the experiments? Well, there are three stages of experimentation we have. We have trial and error method, okay, and we have one factor at the time approach, and we have the factorial approach. Factorial approach means we use more than one factor at this point to test our factors. We have a lot of experiments here that we will see in the coming time also. So in this lecture, we will talk about the design of experiments and the lots of factorials and factors, and what is the fractional factorial design, screening experiments, and so on. So basically, we are here to learn how we can design the experiments and so on. We have basically, as I said, we have three kinds of experimentation method. We have trial and error. For example, now in the make of coffee, you will do the trial and error because we don't know how much exactly we need to put the sugar or coffee initially. When we are, for example, if we have a new milk or new coffee, we don't know exactly how much we put. So what we do, we try and 2-3 different quantities, and we see that which one is working. So that's what we do in the trial and error method. One factor is that once your all other factors are settled, you know everything about it. That's the one factor you want to change and see its effect on the system, and that's what you do. Yes. So it's a powerful technique. As I said, it is used everywhere, and we call it an experimental design in simple words. And that's what we are going to do. We have 6 experiments here in our laboratories in AUIS. And after that, we will give you the project about maybe the simulation project we can give you, or we can give you the physical project in this case. Okay. So why we do this? What is the purpose of those experiments? Why we design those experiments? Well, purpose is to get an optimized product. We change the factors, we see their effects, and we optimize them so that we can get the best option out of it. The history of design of experiment is that it started in 1918 to 40. Basically, they were trying to experiment the impact of some products on agriculture science. Okay, that was the first one. Then later on, from the agriculture, it moved to the industrial area. And then the second industrial area, late 1970s and late 1990s. The purpose was to improve the quality of the products in many companies. And now these experimentation process, you can apply anywhere actually. Whether it's your business, you can set up one product and experiment it, whether it's working or not, what are the problems you are facing. So experimentation is the part of success. Whatever you do in your life, experiments play a major role. So you first experiment the things with this very small amount, you try and get the optimized parameters, and then you go on for the one. Now, in the experimentation, there are three main keywords that we have to care for. One of them is the factors. What are the factors? Their quantities, levels. For example, if you want to use the oven, these are your factors. How much is the temperature you want to keep? Where you can keep 200 degrees centigrade, or you can keep 100 degrees centigrade in the oven. So which one exactly and why? So this is the levels you need to select, the quantities you need to select. And what is the outcome of your product? So you have factors, you set up their levels, and you get your responses. Okay. What we are interested in our experiments is the response. Okay. Definitely we want a tasty, a very nice, colorful, beautiful kind of a cake. Okay. In order to achieve that success, what kind of factors are involved? Okay. And how much we should do. Now these levels selected based on different, as I said, you can do the trial and error, or based on your experience, or you can take some start using trial and error and optimize them, to try them, then next time you try them again, then next time you try them again, you try three or four times different ways, and finally you come up with a very good output, and you come up the best cake you can ever make in Soleimania. So that's the point. So three things are important: factors, levels, and responses when we design the factors. So as per their definition, how we can define them? The factors are the inputs. What are the inputs? Okay. For example, now if you are designing an experiment, let's say in oil and gas industry, and there are so many experiments you can do actually in oil and gas industry. Anyone know what is bubble point pressure? Bubble point pressure, anyone?
Yes, it's the pressure where the first bubbles of gas appear.
Yes. In which course you studied this?
Introduction to Petroleum Engineering.
Yeah, introduction is the first bubble of
Yes.
gas when it comes out of it. So for that, we need to do the experiment. Exactly at what pressure the first bubble is coming out. Okay. So what we do in that case, we will raise the pressure and we depressurize the oil and we observe it from the camera or from the window till the first bubble comes out. So that was our input parameter, which is the pressure. We increase the pressure, and actually we are looking for cause and effect diagram here, this one. So we have to look at the factors exactly what we are looking for. As I said, we are looking for the bubble point pressure, or maybe there are some other factors that we can look for in other experiments. So every experiment is different. And first of all, when you design your experiment, you have to definitely come up with the objective. What is the objective of your experiment? Then you can design the experiment according to them. So in experimentation, basically we have factors, we have levels, and we have response. Level is the quantity. Level is the quantity that we select. Okay, settings like the oven temperature setting, how much quantity of the sugar, how much cup of the flour of sugar, how many eggs you are going to put. So the level, you can change the different levels and come up with different results. So those results needs to be recorded and evaluated and respond. And then we have another word which we call it a response. Response is the output of experiment. We look at what, if we change the level, what is the response we get? Okay, let's say our factor is sugar. How much sugar and what is the response? So factors are connected directly to the response and we have to evaluate in this one. This is the general experimentation diagram. We have some inputs here. Okay, and we look for the factors, what factors we have. Now here in this case, we have two factors. One of them is controllable and other are is not controllable. Now, if we look at the experimentation that we do in oil and gas industry, usually we talk about the rocks. Okay, and these rocks, you cannot change them. So you actually cannot change the size of the rock or the pore space of the rock. So these things you cannot change it. But what you can change is the pressures, is the temperature. So these are your controllable factors, or you can change the flow rate even. And but you cannot change the pore space and the permeability, the porosity of the rock. So these are the uncontrollable factors. So once you control these factors, you change different pressures, you look at the different temperatures, you look at different flow rates, and then you observe the output. What is the output you want? You want the output that you desire. That's the overall process. So you have an input, you have an output. Okay. Remember, in reservoir engineering or in computer engineering, we talked about garbage in, garbage out. Okay. Your quality of input determines the quality of output. Okay. For example, you want to make a cup of coffee. Instead of sugar, you forgot you put the salt in it. Okay. So the moment you put salt in front instead of sugar, your output will not be sweet. Definitely, it will be based on the salt. So garbage in, garbage out. You should always have reliable data. Okay. Process is never wrong. You must take care of your inputs. What input you are doing, and then you look for the process, and then you look for the desired output, and so on. Okay. Then in experimentation, there are a number of things that we look for. Some of them are these ones. For example, we look for interactions, we look for randomization, and we look for blocking, and we look for replication. Okay. So far, any questions for the design of experiments?
No, thank you.
So we are talking about the key terminology used in the experiments. Remember, we are in a course of laboratory engineering. Our main job is to learn how to design an experiment, how to conduct an experiment, and how to analyze the experiments later on. So we have three phases of designing, conducting, and analyzing. So before we go to the lab, we have to design our experiment, and that's what we are planning to do here before we go to the lab. And for that, we are here to learn how to actually design those experiments here. So in the interaction one, actually, some of the factors has effect on others. Sometimes one factor, okay, is behaving in a different way. But when two or three factors, we are changing them, they give us the different result. So when we do the experiment, we always look for the interaction of different uh, parameters or factors that can work together. For example, now in the rock, you are sending the water. Now, if you have the rock, you are sending the water inside it. So if it has the minerals, there will be interaction inside it. Okay, and these interaction, it means that if there was water alone only in the rock, the result may be different. But now, because the rock had the minerals and mineral can react with the water, so the result may come up. So there's whatever factor you are applying, there's a chance that it may interact with other factors and come up with absolutely different results. Another result thing I can tell you about interactions, for example, there are many chemicals that are not stable under over 50 degrees centigrade. Okay, for example, you have a process where you have to go through 100 plus degree centigrade, and then you are using some chemicals that are not even stable. So because of that high temperature, that chemical may not perform well, or will poorly perform, because at high temperature or high pressure, it will become destabilized. So in that case, you have to look at interactions, how these certain environment, how these chemicals or your factors are behaving in the experimentation process. These things you will see practically when we design the lab experiment. Today, I'm just introducing the concepts. What are the concepts when we talk about the laboratory design? Then in terms of the randomization, we have some factors that we just put them as a random. We don't know their details. Sometimes we have no idea what are we doing. All we can do is just do the trials. Okay, so what we do, we just do the random experiments. We try, we find out, okay, we want just to randomize the experimental runs. In that case, you have to do a lot of experimentation because you just are doing just random experiment. You don't know what is the outcome. Random experiments, somebody asks you, okay, you want to make, let's say, tea. So how much exactly sugar you need to put? 1 spoon, 2 spoon, 3 spoon, 4, 5, 6. You're not making one tea. Let's say you are making 500 teas together. So for 500 teas, which number of how much amount of sugar will give you the best result? Okay, and will it give? Will it? Let's say you have some other options like you have to put some honey, or maybe you need to put some cinnamon in it. So the factors may interact each other, and the sweetness may differ. So in that case, the randomization jumps in, and you estimate from your brain. Okay, now if there are 500 cups, I should put 400 spoons. So this is the random, you put randomly, you tried it and it succeed. It's, sometime by God, sometime by luck or so on. So this is the randomization concept we talk about. In the blocking experiments, what we do, we just control some of the factors. We do not change them at all. We keep all of them same. We just change one of it in this blocking technique. So what we do, we keep everything similar, homogeneous segments, okay? Or we just change one variable and we look at its effect. So what we do, blocking means to run all combination at one level, similar level, before running the treatment to the next. So we keep all the factors same, we look at their effect, and then we change just one factor out of it to check what is going on in the case space. And of course, replication is the imitation or copy paste of the experiment. Remember, whatever experiments we do, we don't do it for one time. We do many, many runs. Sometimes we do 5 runs, sometimes we do 10 runs, sometimes we do 100 runs, sometimes we do 200 runs. So we do lots of runs. We just replicate them. We just change the data, change the factors, the level of the factors, and we see their effect on them until we reach to the final conclusion. In the reservoir simulation, usually what we do, this is the physical experiment that you are doing. But sometime in computer, I know that in one of my project, we had at least 2,000 runs. And in real engineering, when we talk about the reservoir engineering, sometimes we had to run 1 million times because the cells of the reservoir model had 1 million cells. So each cell needs one calculation. So 1 million calculation needs to be done. Sometimes you have to do the running of experiments that much time. So, but this is computers are fast, they can do that. But if you go to the lab, you cannot really reach to that level at the moment. This is the most important slide of this lecture, and which is going to help us to do it. For example, first of all, when you look for the experiment, first of all, you need to know what is your problem, what kind of problems you are defining. Okay, so now let me ask you from any of your courses for the experiments you did. Was the problem designed? Was the problem defined before? I want to ask from the students.
In most of the cases, yeah.
Yes. Now let's say we want to, can you define a problem right now so that we can define the objectives out of it? From your design project 1, do you know, so there's something called problem statement?
Yes, we did have a problem statement, yes.
We had the problem statement.
Basically, our project was designing and building a UAV. So
okay.
The problem was building a UAV that is like very environmental friendly, low carbon footprints, and that like costs, the cost is very little. And
okay.
So that was like identifying the problem, then we identified the parameters, and then we started designing it.
Exactly. And now I would like to ask other students to come up with their problem statement of design project 1. All of you are in the same project, or I'm sure you may have different projects.
I am taking design this semester, so I haven't started yet.
Okay, any other course where you encounter any problem statement or any problem?
Like usually in the other labs, for example, in chemistry labs, Like
Okay.
we had some sort of a solution, and so what we had to do was to recreate that through experiments. And usually, like we need there was the molarity given or the density, and then we had to reproduce that.
Okay. Okay. So now you will go in design project 1, you will go on a bit advanced level. Yes, any other student, please, about defining the problem statement?
We also had a class, it was called physics lab.
Okay.
So one of the experiments was we had like two cars, two bodies.
Yeah.
We were experimenting on energy and collision, the
Okay.
momentum and collision. So the problem was like we would put one car in one side, and then we would set up a mark somewhere, somewhere. Then the other car would go fast and then collide with the other car. We would, the problem was we would define how much momentum or how much energy should this car carry at what speed so that the other car will go past beyond that point when the collision happens.
Okay. Okay, that's right. Now I'm going to do all these right now for you. I will give you one example, but the example that I'm going to give you is related with the reservoir engineering, is oil and gas engineering. So some of you may not be aware, but at least let me try and see how much you understand that point. I will start a whiteboard. Okay. Okay. Now what we want to do here, we have oil. And we have the gas. Okay. First of all, as I said, we have to give the problem statement. Okay. Now, when I talk about the problem statement, what I want here, we have an oil reservoir. The rock is sandstone. We want to know how much oil it has. Okay. We have this reservoir. Okay. And our problem here is we need to know that how much oil it has. Okay. And the problem here also is that we don't know itself is a problem, that how much oil it has, and the rock, we said that it's a sandstone rock. Okay, and our problem is how much oil we have. Now, in order to solve this problem, our next step, if you look, is we have to determine the objective. In order to solve this problem statement, we have to look at the objectives. Okay, so my first objective is, what I will do in this case is to learn about the volumetric and material balance equation / mathematics that is used to quantify the oil. Okay, this will be my first objective. Second objective will be, I will gather necessary reliable data. Okay. Third objective will be to perform the calculations. These will be my objectives. Okay. Now we have a problem. We want to quantify the oil here, and this because of this problem statement, we have these kind of objective. And but how these objectives are achieved? For example, many of you may not know what is the volumetric. Even for example, let's say I don't know what is the volumetric and material balance equation, or what are the mathematics behind that we can use to determine the amount of oil that we have here, or what kind of calculations what we are going to do. So in this case, I will go back to the lecture. Yes. Now, as I said, we defined the problem. Our problem is to calculate the total amount of oil present in the reservoir. Based on this, our problem, we defined some objectives. We said, okay, first we will learn about the volumetric or material balance methods. Okay, then we will look for the data. Okay, then we will do the calculation. These are the 3 steps. Now, step 1 is the literature review, brainstorming. First, you have to go back to the literature in the research, previous research activities. You have to go back to the books and other scientists, how they have quantified this oil. What kind of methods they have used. So you have to go, we call it a literature review. First, you have to go and do the brainstorming, read a lot, read, just read, and look at those ones. Now, from those, you find out that, okay, this is, we find out we can quantify using the volumetric method. And in the volumetric method, we need some parameter like porosity and permeability. Then based on those research you read, you find out some parameters that you have to find out. So you will design porosity experiment, permeability experiment, you will design the fluid experiments, you will find out the bubble point pressure and so on. So you design all your experiments. So based on the research. So after you design your experiments, you will go back and to the laboratory and conduct those experiments. And after you conduct those experiments, you will have lots of data. Once you have those data, you will put them in the equations that you find out during the brainstorming, and in the end, you will have your results. And definitely in the end, you will verify with the results with your simulation and your predictions and so on. So this is the experimentation process going on. So even in this course or in any other course or in your project, design project 1, design project 2, you have to start from the problem statement, define your objectives, what exactly you are going to do, how you are going to do. Then you will study a lot about it actually. Then once you study about it, you will find out what you need, which kind of experiments you need, what kind of data you need. So you will design your experiments, and later on then you will conduct those experiments in the laboratory. You will get the data, analyze that if your data is reliable or not. As I said before, garbage in, garbage out. If your data is garbage, you will get the garbage in the end. So you have to make sure that your data is reliable, is accurate, is correct, and then in the end you will do your calculation and come up with some results. Any question from it? Any question? No question. Okay.
No, sir.
No, doctor. Thank you.
Okay. We go ahead. Now we will look at, when we design our experiments, what kind of methods we have. Well, usually we go for the 1 factorial, or we go for 2 or full factorials. Factorials mean, should we analyze 1 factor at one time, or we can analyze more factors at one time. Then we go for all the fractional factors together. And so there are different methods that we do. But what I know from my experimentation, that we usually go for 1 factor, we look at its effect, then we go for another, then we go for another, or sometimes we go for 2 or 3 different factors together, and so on. Okay. So in the 1 factorial method, actually we just look for 1 factor. For example, you are changing the pressure. Okay, you are changing the flow rate and checking in the pipe, like how much is the pressure drop is occurring. Okay. For example, you are sending the water at, let's say, 3 liters per minute. Okay, so at 3 liters per minute, what is your initial pressure and how much the energy pressure is dropped inside those pipelines? This is your experiment, because you are just checking the 1 factor at this point. Now, okay, this could be qualitative or quantitative, means, what kind of material you are using, anything, but just 1 factor you put it in this case. But then we have, okay, we call this 1 factor method sometimes ANOVA. Okay, this analysis of variation. So what we do, sometimes we want to check the effect of temperature on, let's say, bubble point. Okay, you keep the temperature, let's say 50 degree. You keep the temperature, let's say 75 degree. You keep the 100 degree, and you check it at 125 degree centigrade. So what you want to do here, you want to check the bubble point pressure at which the first drop of bubble comes out of reservoir or comes out of the liquid, but at different temperatures. Okay. 50 degree, 75 degree, 100 degree, or 125. So this is called the variance. We are changing we are doing the variation in the temperature to look at the effect on its effect on the bubble point pressure. So this is, we are just playing with the one factor. But if you go further and you play with the composition, also, let's say you added CO2, more CO2, 10%. Okay. Or you maybe you have more factor, let's say now you put 20%. So now you have 30%. Now you have 40%. Okay, now you have the crude oil with different CO2. Okay. In the previous case, when there was one factor only, so you could run 4 experiments and come up with the bubble point pressure. But now you have 2 factors, means you have 4 different temperatures and you have 4 different compositions. Okay, so it means that if you know the permutation formula, so you have to multiply 4 with 4. So it means now you have to do 16 experiments. 16 experiments to come up with the best results. This is the difference between the one experiment and 2 factorial experiment. Any question from it? It means that if you increase the number of factors, it means you have to go more experimentation to come up with the optimized results. So what we do, we call it the analysis of variance. We just look at the one factor, we determine its effect on it, and we come up with the best one. This is one of the examples he's giving. They are looking at the transactions per day, weekday or yes. Any question? Okay. Then we said that we have the full factorial method. In this method, we look at all factors altogether. And as I said, when we have 2 factors, it means you have to do 16 experiments. So when you have, let's say, lots of factors, let's say 5 factors, 6 factors, 8 factors. So it means it will be very hard for you to go for, you know, hundreds or 200 or 300. And then you have here your skills and experience jumps in, and you find out based on your experience, your literature review, and you minimize the number of experiments so that you come up with one. So what you will do in that case, you look for the main factors and their interaction between the factors, how they are reacting and performing each other. More factors means you have to run more experiments. More experiments means you will come up with more things out of it. Okay, in this one, for example, they used 2 factors. Okay, and they had 2 factors, A and B, and they have only one choices. Okay, there's only plus and there's only plus. So in this case, you only need to do, you know, 4 times experiment, because A has 2 choices and B had 2 choices. So you do the experiment 4 times and come up with the method. So the more factors you have, the more variations you have, the more experiments you have to do, and the more data you will generate out of it. More analysis you need to done, more simulations you need to done, more interpretation you have to done as an engineer at the same point. As I said, when we have the 2 factorial method, we have to find out the effect of each one and find out how the response is coming. What is the output? Okay, what we are doing, why we are doing the experiment, our main objective is to find out the outputs, to the best optimized output in that area, in whatever experiment we are doing for. So this is the 2 experimentation method. We look for different 6 to 15 factors. We have 2 to 15 factors, and then we go for the designing of those factors. Now, fractional factorial method, this is the most important factor. Now, for example, you have 4 choices for factor 1, 4 choices for factor 2, 4 choices for factor 3. It means that you are going to do 4 multiplied by, you need to do 64 runs at the moment. So for example, you have factor 1 has 4 choices, factor 2 has 4 choices, factor 3 has 4 choices. So now you have 3 factors, and each factor has 4 different levels. Okay, So you have to do the experiments like 4 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 4, 64 times. Okay, you don't have that much money, you don't have that much time, and you don't have that much energy to go and do the experiment 64 times in the laboratory, or spend 1 year just to do the experiment. So what in that case you do, you go for the best one. You just find out the fractional factorial method. You run, just find out the optimum parameters that you think they are correct based on your knowledge, and then you do the fewer runs to understanding by the major assumptions that whatever you are doing. So whatever experiment you are doing, actually you have to understand the basics of it and learn from the others' experience what they are doing. Then a screening experiment is to, finding the best out of the best. So in whatever factors you are using. In this one, we use the fractional factorial experiments. We use all interactions, we check every way, and we find out with the finally the best solution for those experiments here. In this course, we will go for all these kind of experiments. We will try to give you experience of 1 factors, 2 factors, 3 factors. And but before that, we have to, as we go back to the slide, we will look at the problem first. We will follow this style, the standard style of experimentation design. We will first define the problem. We will determine the objectives. I will ask you to go do the brainstorm. Then we design the experiment. Then we will go for the laboratory data. So that was the general introduction of the designing of experimentation. Any questions? Okay. Now let me tell you what we are going to do in the next lecture. We will, in next lecture, I will introduce you the 6 experiments that we have. Okay. In all of those 6 experiments, we will do the first 4 steps. Here, you and me together, we will define these 4 steps. Then we will go to the laboratory and conduct those experiments there. And then we will get the data from there, then we will analyze it. So probably we just need the lab 2 days in this before the midterm exam, 1 or 2 days maximum. So I will try to arrange that one after we come up with some experimentation design based on this one. So for now, we will stick to these 4. Defining problems, determining our objectives. We will do some literature review. I will teach you how to do the literature review, and we will design the experiments. That's all about the laboratory engineering. So laboratory engineering basically, revolves around all these 8 points. Define your problem, determine your objectives, learn how to do the brainstorming or literature review, learn how to do your experimentation design, conduct your experiments, get the data, analyze it, report it, and that's the overall laboratory engineering design. Yes, any question, please?
Sir, how many experiments do we have for this course?
We have 6 as a normal code in the course, 6, and 1 you have to do. I mean, after the midterm, you have to do everything on your own. Okay. Maybe some of you, I may ask you to develop oil rig, a small oil rig. So let's see how, when we reach to that point, we will discuss. Or maybe you can do based on simulations or softwares. So we will see how we will arrange it later on.
So for each, we have to do it in the lab?
Yes, we have to do it in the lab, but these 6 experiments, they are very simple experiments, and they won't need more time. If we go 2 times in the lab, we can do all of them.
And the topics is chosen by you?
Topics is mutually exclusive. You can also select it. I can also give you. Okay, if something that sparks your mind or something that you think you should do it, I have no problem. Okay, but it should be, that level, professional level.
Doctor?
Yes.
Should we separate into groups, or we should do it in a single person?
We will, 2 students are fine in one group. Also, it depends on the cost of the project. And university said that they will pay the price of the project. If whatever material you need to buy, we need to ask them, they will purchase for us.
So Doctor, I mean each group composed of 2 people?
Yeah, 2 is fine, yes. I would prefer 2.
Sir?
Yes.
So what was the experiment? Building an oil rig?
Yes.
You mean like building a whole platform, or?
No, not the platform, the rig, the direct.
Only the rig?
Only the rig, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's not, it's lots of mechanical engineering background. It needs some efforts.
Right.
I'm not looking for something static model. I'm not a real dynamic working drilling model.
Yeah.
You can look at the videos before on YouTube. They are available. We will. This is after the midterm. First, we have to learn how to do all of these things before we come up with that one.
Thank you.
So, any other questions for now? Okay. So I'm going to upload this one, and in the next one we will discuss what kind of lab experiments we have, and we will talk about them, what we are going to do here in the lab. Okay. Okay, so see you guys in the next class, and I think it's enough for today.
Yes, thank you so much, Doctor.
Have a good day.
Yes, any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Okay, welcome.
Have a good day, sir.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye.